Let's talk about 5 cloud computing myths that many people fall victim to. And we're going to start with the number one that everybody falls victim to, including people who work in cloud computing, and that's cloud costs more. And this myth stems from the fact that people think that cloud computing and on premise data center are the same thing. It's like saying a hammer is horrible at screwing screws in. Yes, yes, this is not what this is made for. If you take your screwdriver to screws in, it's perfect. If you take a hammer, it doesn't work the same way. And it's the same thing with cloud computing. Cloud computing has technologies that are dedicated to cloud computing to perform in an optimal fashion. If we go back to the hammer example, a hammer can put a screw in a piece of wood. No problem. It's not great. It's not supposed to do it, but it will do it. And that's the same thing with cloud computing. Cloud computing is not made to run infrastructure. It can, but this is not where the value of cloud computing resides. If you want to do cloud computing properly, you have to use cloud computing technologies such as serverless, scaling, some automation. Think about things like Kubernetes, Azure Functions, container registries, and all these technologies that are made to save you money and be used only when you need them, as opposed to on-premise world where everything is made to be used 24/7, regardless of whether or not you need them. Myth number 2 is cloud computing is not secure. Cloud computing is very secure, but you also have the ability to mess things up. If you don't check the right checkbox and you have a public IP address, or you have your storage that's open with anonymous access, yeah, you can run into issues, but the default settings are actually rather secure. And you have the ability to make it as secure as you possibly want it to be, with a lot of things being able to run in their own private environment, completely isolated from the outside world. The difference with on-premise and the cloud is that on-premise you have to worry about a lot more security than you do with cloud computing, because in cloud computing you have software as a service and you have platform as a service, and these offerings allow you to worry about the things you care about, which is the data and maybe the application, and everything else is handled by a big company who has teams dedicated to the security and monitoring of these resources. Whereas on premise, you don't have that. You are responsible for the full stack of your infrastructure. You are responsible for the physical security. You are responsible for the hardware security, right? Nobody gets and plugs in a flash drive where they're not supposed to. You're responsible for the operating system security, meaning you have to patch everything. You're responsible for the software security. Again, you have to patch or address vulnerabilities. Then you have responsible for access and all that stuff. So just the fact that on-premise security is more complicated and requires way more resources to implement means that it is less secure. There are way more things that can go wrong with on-premise security, especially if you're not able to afford a dedicated security team. Whereas in the cloud, you don't have to worry about all this. Everything is handled for you, and you can do your work without worrying about security. Myth number 3, cloud computing is for small businesses only. And I am here. I work for a multi-billion-dollar company. We are not a small business. We are a large multinational billion-dollar business. And we are moving a lot of our workloads to the cloud. And so small businesses can and will and definitely do benefit from cloud computing, but big businesses also use cloud computing very, very heavily. This is because cloud computing allows companies to offload a lot of the IT team and a lot of the physical infrastructure work to a third-party company, which is the cloud provider, and allows the business to focus on things that actually generate revenue for the company, and that is the software or that is the data. So big companies do and will more and more move to the cloud. Cloud computing is going to provide so many jobs in the next 10 years because of all this infrastructure shifting from on premise to the cloud. At the same time, software vendors are also moving from on premise to cloud. They have noticed that they can offer much better services using cloud computing than they can using servers or the classic infrastructure. They provide you with things like installers, or they provide you with pre-made software packages in the marketplace of cloud vendors. A lot of vendors, if you go into the Azure marketplace, you can see a lot of vendors, tens of thousands of products are in there for you to readily click and deploy. They don't have to support the deployment and all that. So it makes it very easy for them, software manufacturer, to provide services in the cloud. And because software manufacturer are now providing software in the cloud, that means that you're going to need way more jobs of people who are able to use and maintain cloud infrastructure. And that's why cloud computing is going to grow, especially in big businesses. Myth number 4, cloud computing is not for compute heavy tasks. And that is just flat out wrong. Cloud computing is definitely capable of doing very compute heavy tasks. You can build whatever infrastructure you want for compute heavy tasks. You can create compute clusters. You can create render farms. You can create so many configurations of compute heavy infrastructure to do an analysis or whatever in the cloud. You can make it also global. You can also make your cloud compute infrastructure global with with gigabit or hundreds of gigs connection between data centers. This is the best place to do compute heavy tasks. Now, of course, if you have virtual machines in the cloud, it's very expensive, but compute heavy tasks are completely 100% doable in the cloud. Not only that, but you also have the ability to scale up and down that infrastructure for your compute task, meaning that when your compute cluster or your compute resources are not in use, you can scale them back down, and then you can scale them back up when you need them. So what this means is that not only is it better for compute heavy tasks, it is also cheaper, because if one day you say, you know what, it's a holiday, nobody's going to be running analysis today, I can just turn everything off, and then tomorrow I just turn it back on, and you can save a lot of money. Whereas a physical cluster, a physical data center, you can't just turn it down, off, or scale it down. Like, this is not an option. So cloud computing is great for compute heavy tasks. And lastly, cloud computing is mostly for storage. False, 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 false. Cloud computing is great for storage. It's almost an unlimited source of data storage. But cloud computing is great for so many other things. We saw with the previous one, compute is also one thing that it's great for. Other things that it's great for is software as a service type of offerings. And they have a lot of nice software as a service offerings in the cloud. So yeah, if the previous point didn't convince you that cloud computing is great for things other than storage, then I'm sorry. And if you want to learn more about cloud computing, here's my playlist right here, and feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.